Beverly Harms. Einstein Circle is a program of the Lifelong Learning Academy at USFSM. We meet every Wednesday from 2:30 to 4 p.m. here in Selby Auditorium, and campus parking is free for these events. For those unfamiliar with the Lifelong Learning Academy, our courses and programs our catalogs for our courses and programs are out on the front desk. If you don't know anything about us, please pick them up and take them with you. Our spring registration is now underway. Next Wednesday's Einstein Circle, Religion and War, Irrelevant, a Minor Factor or a Major Cause, will be moderated by Jerry Frost, one of LLA's premier instructors. Jerry is Emeritus Jenkins Professor of Quaker History and Research at Swarthmore College and founder and chair of their Peace and Conflict program. For those who are here for the first time and who may not be familiar with the purpose and intent of Einstein Circle, the format is not that of a traditional lecture. Guest moderators of Einstein Circle are invited to share their knowledge, their experience, and their expertise on a particular topic or subject matter, and engage participants in informational, thought-provoking discussion. How that is done is at the discretion of the moderator, who may choose to integrate questions and talk back as they go along, or may prefer having it take place at the end of the presentation. Please keep comments and questions to no more than 2 minutes, and look for, there's someone with a tag back in the back that says Ask Me. It's a lime green tag. Look for her, raise your hand, and she will bring a microphone. Please don't start talking until you have the microphone in hand. As if you just shout out questions, nobody will hear you. So if everyone would now just silence their cell phones or turn them off, we'll get started. Driving here today, I began to think about this long introduction I had put together for Neil Phillips, and about a block from here I realized this is ridiculous. A few weeks ago I was at a presentation where the lecturer said something about the longer the introduction, usually the less impressive the man. So if this introduction would be very short, because if I tried to tell you what the impression that I have of Neil after all the things I've seen and read about him, I couldn't begin to do it. He is a most impressive individual. He's one of those people that you meet occasionally in life and think, wow, this guy could have done just about anything he wanted to do. He's remarkable. He is a Harvard graduate. He was an Aspen Institute fellow. He was a professional basketball player. And then he decided to articulate a vision with Visible Men. And he is the principal of Visible Man Academy that he started in Bradenton, Florida, in which he takes underprivileged kids who didn't really have a shot at life, don't really have a shot in life, without a lot of love and mentoring and coaching and encouragement, allowing them to become confident, productive, young men. And with that, Neil Phillips.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate you taking time to come and participate, because I will ask you to participate in this session. Obviously, I want to acquaint you further with the work that we do at Visible Men Academy. And then I'm very interested to get your thoughts, your questions, and for us to be able to have some back and forth around this. Visible Men Academy is a charter school in Bradenton. As Bev mentioned, we are in the Pride Park community, which is our school address is on 63rd Avenue. We are in our second year, and we have 95 boys, kindergarten through 4th grade. Our charter is for kindergarten through 8th grade, so eventually we'll work our way to full maturity. At that point, when we are a full kindergarten through 8th grade school, we anticipate that we'll have somewhere around 350 boys. Last year we were kindergarten through 2nd grade with about 60 boys, so we are growing and will continue to grow. The reason we exist is to combat and ultimately reverse what we consider to be a humanitarian crisis. And we are very intentional about viewing it as a humanitarian crisis. The humanitarian crisis is right here in our own neighborhoods and communities, locally, regionally, nationally, and that crisis is the underachievement in terms of school and life outcomes for minority boys who are soon becoming majority boys who are from low-income family backgrounds, who have achieved for decades what we consider to be unacceptable school and life outcomes. It starts with a disconnection from the school experience. That disconnection starts off as psychological and emotional, and then ultimately, for too many, ends with dropping out of high school or failure to graduate, even if they don't drop out. And that failure to graduate from high school lends itself to the perpetuation of the cycle, which then leads to an individual not being prepared or equipped to get a job. And that individual has a difficult time getting a job, then they're more susceptible to alternative ways of supporting themselves. And in too many cases, those ways lead them to the criminal justice system. So it's disconnection from school, not graduating from high school, unemployment, too often incarceration, recidivism, early mortality, and all along the way there is this wake of damage and disconnect from family life, from supporting a family that you may have started, being absent, and all of the things that come as a result of that. And we believe that that can and must be combated, and combated with urgency. So there are overarching questions that we think have to be asked of all of us as community members, as citizens, those of us who are in the education realm on a systematic level, those of us who are educators in a schoolhouse, those of us who are parents. And the first of those questions is, do we love these boys? Do we love these boys? Because if we love these boys, and the boys I'm talking about are commonly referred to as at-risk boys, boys who are most susceptible statistically to negative school and life outcomes. Most of these boys are black boys, but not all. Many of these boys are Hispanic boys. What they increasingly have in common is that they're poor boys. They're boys from low-income family backgrounds. And these are the boys who are overrepresented in negative life outcomes and underrepresented in positive life outcomes. So the first overarching question is, do we love our boys? The second overarching question is, do we think our boys are capable of great things? And then the third overarching question is, do we feel the necessary urgency to address and combat this crisis? Those are the questions that we have to ask of ourselves, of our educators, of our politicians, of all of our citizens. And hopefully, the answer to all three of those questions is yes. We love them, we believe they're capable of great things, and we want to address and combat and reverse this crisis with urgency. So we do at Visible Men Academy. The answer to those questions for us is absolutely yes, yes, and yes. And what we are absolutely convinced of is that there is greatness within every boy that comes through our doors, and that it is our job to create an environment where that greatness can manifest. We believe that greatness is within them. And the first task for us is to create an environment that results in our boys loving school. We need our boys to have a positive connection to school, a positive affiliation with school, because far too many of our boys feel disconnected from the school experience and feel like school is not for them, is not for them. And so you see that they drop out in high school physically, but too often they drop out emotionally and psychologically when they're with us, kindergarten, first, second grade. And that is the first task at hand. Help our boys create a positive connection to school. The other thing we have to do is we, as the educators in the building, we have to say to ourselves and be absolutely committed to the reality that our boys will be successful because of who they are, not in spite of who they are. Because of who they are. We have 95 boys, and we know that too many of our boys live in daily hardship. Daily hardship. And we know that it is a chore and a challenge for many of them to arrive at school each day. And when they walk into our building, we have to have two thoughts. The first is we have to have empathy for their hardship. We have to have empathy for the hardship. And then quickly, we have to shift into a mindset that says the very traits that they are exercising, that they're displaying in order to be at school every day, in order to listen to their teachers, in order to communicate and socialize with their friends, and to overcome that difficulty, those very traits are the very traits that will contribute to their success, are the very traits that should have all of us saying, wow, if he can deal with that and still come and deliver and produce every day, he should be running a company someday. He should be a doctor. He should be a leader. So we know that our boys can be successful because of who they are, not in spite of who they are. The other thing we have to do is we have to create an environment that is conducive to how boys learn. So there are several distinguishing features about us as a school. And the most notable is that we are a single gender school. We're an all boys school. Now, what does that afford us? Well, it means several things. One thing it means is that we are a loud school. There is volume on our campus. There is movement on our campus and activity on our campus. There is boy energy, and we love it. We love it. And one of the things we are sure to do is not to penalize or punish boys for boy energy. We want to channel that into positive ways. We want to channel it into positive ways. So the same sort of technology that is enabling us to walk around with these unbelievably capable devices in our pocket and iPads and tablets and all of those things, the nanotechnology that is proliferating those things is the same technology that is enabling us to learn more and more about the brain. And the brain research continually reveals that there are differences in the ways that boys and girls learn. And that doesn't sound too scientific to any of us sitting in this room to say that boys and girls, men and women are different. We learn differently, and the more we learn about that, the more it affords us an opportunity to create an environment that is conducive to how boys learn. So one thing we know is that boys like movement, right? They like activity, they need it, their bodies require it. Obviously girls do too, but for boys, it becomes a problem when an environment restricts what is natural for them and punishes them for it. So if you come to our school, you are likely to have a lot of little boys scurrying past your legs, right? So you've always got to keep your eyes up. You're definitely going to hear them. And you're going to be in an environment that does what we think is the opposite of what our traditional school system does. We think our traditional school system too often celebrates compliance over engagement. It values compliance over engagement. Are you following rules? Are you raising your hand before you give the answer? These things are important. We know that. But if I have a boy in the room who is so eager to demonstrate that he knows the subject matter and he's got the answer, I would much rather have him blurt that answer out than feel like he is being punished because he didn't raise his hand. So we want engagement, and we'll do whatever it takes to get engagement. So when you're in our classrooms, and we tell our teachers all the time, there are times when it's a great thing for you to ask your boys to raise their hand. They need to learn how to do that. But more often, they should be encouraged to scream out the answer if they have it. And if they have it again on the next question, scream it out again. Because that is engagement. And that's critical for us. The other thing that's a real hallmark of our school and is a critical piece of our mission is that we believe that character and social development is integral in the lives of these children and needs to be taught and measured and assessed in the same ways that we teach and measure and assess academics. We believe that things like perseverance, work ethic, healthy relationships, community awareness, all of these things that we all know have contributed greatly to any success that we have found, right? If I were to ask you, what are the top 5 things that have contributed to success in your life? I don't think any one of you would tell me that you memorized the facts to the War of 1812. Or the quadratic equation is what really set you off on a path to success. You would list a long list of life skills. Knowing that, we think it's absolutely imperative that we teach them. And we believe they can be taught. So we create what we call a SHINE culture. And we have a light theme at school. SHINE is an acronym for our core values. The S stands for selflessness, the H is honesty, the I, integrity, the N, niceness, and the E, excellence. So we're a SHINE culture, and we immerse our boys in the study of these core values and the practice of them. So we're constantly talking about SHINE. We're going to shine today. React with SHINE. Shine your best today. And our boys will come running down the hall and they say, Mr. Phillips, I'm shining today. And that is when all of the adults in the building apply the trust but verify. Right? So, good for you. I'll get back to you in a minute here after I check in with your teacher. And usually, there's alignment there. But the energy that we feel in our building around this immersion in the core values and this immersion in character and social development tells us that this is something our boys want. They want to be guided in these ways. They want to be great at these things. We ask them all the time, not just to tell us how they have been shining, they're very quick to tell us that. We want to know how they see others shining. Because if their eyes start to open up to recognize this kind of virtuous behavior in others, it will enhance their ability And that is an absolutely critical point. The character and social development piece, we feel, is a major contributor to academic progress. And we think that that's obvious. If you learn to work hard, if you learn to overcome adversity, if you learn to embrace challenges, these are things that are going to help your reading proficiency and your math proficiency. We see it that way, and we devote a lot of time and energy to our character development. Another piece that's really, really important to us, individualized instruction. So we know in a classroom, and we're no different than any other school, we may have a classroom of first graders, but among that body of boys, in our case, is a wide range of proficiency levels. And we feel too often in traditional school environments, we're teaching to a grade level, in this case, first grade, knowing that there are students in the room, some of whom who aren't at a first grade level in that particular content area, and others of whom who are beyond a first grade level, but yet we teach first grade. And what we're saying is we have to teach proficiency levels. You may be a first grader by age, but what's more important to us is what is your proficiency level? Where are you as a reader, as a mathematician, as a scientist? Where are you? And once we identify that, we want to teach to exactly where you are. And one of the things that enables us to do that, a key piece of what enables us to do that, is our use of technology and educational software. The progression and the development of educational software, it's really fascinating to see what is out there. First of all, we have laptops and we have iPads. Our boys absolutely love pushing buttons. They love the screen time. The software is very, very engaging, so just that interface is something that excites them. They get excited to work with these tools. But beyond that, the software feeds them content at their proficiency levels. So in one of our classrooms, you'll see a tech station and you'll see 4 boys right next to each other, all on the same software program, but they're being fed different content, and they're being fed based on the level that they've demonstrated they've already achieved. So that's wonderful. That's how we customize the learning. And then the other thing that comes from that is our teachers are then getting real-time feedback, real-time accounts of the results. And so what do our teachers do with that? They form small groups that they use to instruct. So you walk into our classroom and you'll see a teacher with 4 or 5 boys around a table working on their math. That group wasn't formed accidentally. That is a group of boys who are at the same proficiency level. You walk into our first grade reading class and you'll notice that one of the boys who is a first grader isn't in the class. Because he's tested at a 3rd grade reading level, he's over with the 3rd graders. Because that's the level he's on. We prioritize proficiency levels. And one day soon, we're not there yet, one day soon we might absolutely abolish grade levels at our school. We recognize that there's an important social development component to keeping kids with their age group and their peers, absolutely, and we'll find plenty of opportunities to do that. But in terms of academic development, we've got to nail proficiency levels. Another piece, and this is a huge piece for us, as with any school that seeks to get great results, you have to have great teachers. And we have great teachers. The way that our teachers are most great is through their personal commitment to our mission and their personal connection to our mission. When we set out to hire our teachers, we said to ourselves, we know we want great technicians. We know we want teachers who, are hungry for professional development and are, magicians at creating a comfortable classroom space. We know we want those things. But the thing we want above and beyond all else is we want teachers to whom our mission is personal. That there is something about being at VMA, working with our boys, that is personal to these teachers. Because we felt if we had that connection and that personal investment, that would be the starting point for the kind of pipeline that we would need and do need in order to teach and learn. Critical, critical component. Two more things I'll touch on. One of them is our name and what results from our name. So Visible Men Academy. Ralph Ellison wrote what I think is one of the greatest literary works of all time, certainly in American history. Right, in the early 50s, he wrote a book, Invisible Man. And in Invisible Man, the protagonist goes hundreds of pages. A black man goes hundreds of pages, and you never learn his name. The ultimate in invisibility. Hardships of navigating through a racist environment, hardships of that invisibility. And we wanted to create something that connoted just and denoted just the opposite. Absolute visibility. We keep hearing about the crisis. There aren't enough black male role models, and who are these boys seeing as role models? And we think that there are plenty of black male role models. I think there are plenty of Hispanic male role models. But the problem is that we need to redefine and expand what we think about as a role model. So what we do at Visible Men, we have Saturday school sessions, one Saturday every month, the first Saturday every month. And that is entirely devoted to our visible men, men from the community who come to our school and engage with our boys. And they talk with our boys about their upbringing, many of whom grew up in the neighborhoods that these boys are living in right now. They talk to them about their pursuit of their profession. They talk to them about their profession and all of the elements to it, and then they tie it all together. And our boys are fascinated. They're fascinated. And we think the reason they're fascinated is because we're starting to see the seeds of something that we think is absolutely critical, which is connecting our boys to future possibility. Connecting them to future possibility. It's one of the things that those of us who have found success in life, we kind of take for granted that at some point, right, and for most of us it was very, very early, we attached ourselves to the notion of future, to the idea that there was going to be a time when we grew up. And what were we going to be when we grew up? Where did we want to live? What did we want our house to look like? All future possibility, this range of options. And when you connect to future possibility, it then informs the decisions you make. It informs your willingness to delay immediate gratification in favor of long-term interests, all healthy things. But in the absence of any connection to a future, why would you delay gratification? How can you tell yourself to endure discomfort and hardship, in some cases boredom, right? Endure all of those things for something that you felt no connection to at all. So connecting to future possibility is absolutely critical. Last year we were kindergarten, first and second grade. In June, we took our boys, we piled them on a school bus, and we took them to a college visit. We went to Eckerd College. And let me just tell you, 60 kindergarten, first and second graders running around Eckerd College was a sight to behold. Was a sight to behold. But the idea was, we didn't want to just talk about college with them as some abstract idea. We wanted them to see it. We wanted them to feel it. We wanted them to go in the student union. We went into science labs. They got to lounge around on the beach at Eckerd College. They got to see people riding skateboards. They got to feel college life. It was one way to connect them to future possibility. Absolutely critical, connecting them to future possibility. The final thing I will share is a very technical sort of logistical thing, but it's absolutely critical, which is that we're an extended school day and extended school year. So we model ourselves after this world of what are called high-performing charter schools and charter school networks. So across the country, you have KIPP and Rocket Ship and Uncommon Schools and Success Academies and Aspire. I mean, the list goes on of these schools and networks of schools across the country that have proven and continually prove that they can take students who have failed in public school, traditional public school settings, and can get them at grade level and far beyond. And one of the truths that emerge from those schools and those networks is a fairly obvious one, but one that is really difficult to execute, which is the more time you keep students in constructive activities, engaged in learning, the better off they are. Fairly obvious. Our school day starts at 7:30 in the morning, ends at 4:15 in the afternoon, and at 4:20 is when our after-school enrichment program starts, and that ends at 5:20. And we've got 80% of our boys in our after-school program. So our day for 80% of our boys is from 7:30 to 5:20. Keeping them on constructive tasks. Our school year, traditional public schools in this area end right at the beginning of June, a couple of days into June, and we go into the third week of June. So we're able to add about 2.5 more weeks onto the school year. These things are absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. So I'll end, before I open it up to the part I'm most looking forward to, is hearing your voices. I'll end with reiterating our commitment to reversing this crisis. And we are absolutely convinced that if we as a society value our boys by loving them, if we expect great things from them, so elevate all of our expectations for their performance, and if we act with urgency, that we are going to see far different and far better school and ultimately life outcomes for our boys. Thank you. Thank you very much. And while Cindy's there, I'll introduce you to Cindy Day, who is our Director of Development at VMA, and she's got the microphone, so keep an eye on her.
Thank you. I wonder what kind of a relationship you work on with the parents of the school.
Great question. So a question about parents, parent involvement, and the way you put it, what kind of a relationship do we develop with parents at school? So one thing we do is we recognize that as a charter school, we have parental involvement from the moment a student enrolls at our school. That parent, or in many cases it's not a parent, it is a primary caregiver, a grandmother, an uncle, an aunt, they have made a decision not to attend their neighborhood school, but they have chosen us. And most often that choice comes at some personal hardship, right? Maybe we're a little further away, we're single gender, so that means Mary or Nancy's not coming to our school. We don't have our full complement of grades, so the older brother is probably not coming. So there's multiple schools, it's logistically more difficult. So there's something about our offering that causes them to make a proactive choice, and so we look at that as step one. The other thing we do is we try to recognize what some of the obstacles to parental engagement with this demographic, what are some of the obstacles that exist? And one of the obstacles that exists is that many, and you could probably say most, of the parents of our boys don't have a positive school experience to reflect on. And so if you don't have a positive school experience to reflect on yourself, you're going to be far less willing and eager to engage in a school environment, to come and voice your opinion, to come and speak with teachers to learn about how your son is doing. So we have to recognize that. And then tangibly, we offer a parent prep program. And our parent prep program, it's gotten off to an absolutely wonderful start. We're in our second 10-week session. And we develop the curriculum from that program by asking our parents what they need, rather than telling them what we think they need. So we hear from our parents, well, I'd love to be able to work more closely with my son on his reading. I am interested in furthering my education, but I don't know what the first steps are. I'd love to know about job opportunities and how to pursue them. All of these topics that come up. And then we work with partners who come in and provide this information for our parents. And our attendance at these sessions, through our first 10-week session that ended around the holidays and through this one now, it's about 95% of the parents who have signed up attend all the time. All the time. Tuesday nights, it's just without fail. And we're close to, Cindy, about 50% participation for our whole parent body. Half of our parents have participated in this. So we're uncovering what seems to be a significant myth about the desire for parents from this demographic to be involved when they're in their kids' schooling. We think the desire is there. What we don't think has been there has been the effort to try to understand some of the dynamics at play. And then the other thing I will say really helps in that regard is pizza. Yes. Thank you for your question.
Hi, may I ask 2 questions?
You'll have to check with Cindy on that.
Well, you've touched a bit on my first question, and that is, how did these young men find you?
So how did they find us? We did and do a lot of what would be termed guerrilla marketing. So we've got flyers that are up in restaurants and stores. Any opportunity we can get to be in front of community members. So there are a lot of neighborhood associations that have community meetings that will invite us to come and present to their folks. Faith-based community, right? So we recognize that that's a really, really influential source. And so when we get invited to go to a particular church or a temple, we go and we present and acquaint people with who we are and let them know that we exist.
My second question is, are there any plans for a Visible Women's Academy?
Are there plans? It would be inaccurate for me to say there are plans, but, okay, right. So the thought is certainly there. And for us, we think that we know, so we're a single gender, we're all boys, and there are some things we do that we think are best suited to creating a learning environment that's suitable for boys. We also know that there are things that we do that we think would be great for all young kids, boys or girls. And so, 2 of our 4 founding team members are women. The other 2 love women. So we're trying to figure out how that's going to fit in our plans. Yes.
She cut in front of
I
you,
did
by
cut
the
in
way.
front of her,
She's your
but,
woman.
but I'm a woman who's not invisible.
That's right.
One of the questions is, what happens, or how do you prepare these young boys when they, quote, age out of your school to be able to survive in a public school or maybe another school? And probably more importantly is, how do you prepare the schools to teach a different way and a child who has learned a different approach to education?
That question about how we prepare our boys for when they are not with us, right? And we're going to be a kindergarten through 8th grade school. I won't hesitate to tell you that we often think about whether we'll be a 9th through 12th grade school as well. But at some point, our boys are going to leave us. And for us, it's absolutely critical for us to think in terms of preparing our boys not just to thrive in our school building, but to be able to thrive, most importantly, outside of our school building. And what that requires is an emphasis on transferable skills, right? This idea that the things you are learning here, the virtues that you're demonstrating, the character traits that you're building here are transportable. And you need to know that, and you need to be able to do that. And I think that the only way we can ensure or maximize the chances that our students thrive when they leave us is by continuing to emphasize it. We do it in small ways now. Every Monday morning at our sunrise, our all-school assembly to start the school day, every Monday morning I ask our boys, so who did you see shine away from here? How did you shine this weekend? The idea being that, yes, we want you to be able to do it in our building, but we need you to do it in real life. The other thing we do is we measure, I mentioned earlier that we do measure our boys' progress and their demonstration of proficiency in these core values in the same way that we do with math and reading. So we have a 4-point scale, and the first point is awareness. Are they aware of work ethic? Are they aware of just the term perseverance? Then we move to knowledge. Can you define it? And then the third on our 4-point scale is understanding. Can you recognize this trait in others? Can you articulate it in different ways? And then the fourth and most important is application. Are you applying this skill, this virtue, to how you live your life? We feel like if we've got boys who are applying it, then that gives us a position, that gives us an opportunity to transfer that or to educate them on how to transfer that into every aspect of their life. And I will say that your question is poignant as well, because one of the things that a lot of these charter school networks that I've mentioned are facing now, they've got graduates who are going off to college. We were talking about this earlier. Graduates who are going off to college, but who aren't finding the success in college that their academic preparation would indicate they should. So there's something else, right? They're academically prepared, but are they well prepared to transfer out of a more comfortable environment and apply the things that they've learned? So we think we got to be really deliberate about that.
In another life and in another place, I was active in our legislature, and there was a great deal of tension between public teachers and their union around the issue of funding for charter schools, and is it taking, do you experience that here, and are you fully public? Are you considered a public school entity?
Great. So I'll answer in the parts in reverse. We are a public school. We're accountable to the Manatee County School District, right? We will receive school grades from the district based on our performance on state-mandated diagnostic tests. We have many aspects of our contract that we have to uphold, so we're accountable to the school district. We're a public school in that we don't have admissions. We have enrollment. So a boy and a family chooses us, and they enroll, and they're in. Right? And our funding comes from the per pupil allocation that the public schools receive. They receive a little bit more because there's some things as a charter school we're not eligible for, but that gives you an indication of just how public a public school we are. The other part of your question was around the tension between pro-charter, anti-charter, funding this, and we've absolutely experienced that. We feel like the good news, in a sad way, but the good news in terms of our existence and our future, is that we have not come across anyone, pro-charter or anti-charter, who is willing to refute the reason we exist. Haven't come across anyone, regardless of what position they have. They recognize that we are here to try to address a crisis that the traditional public school system has not been able to address for decades. That helps us in some ways. But there absolutely is that tension around our existence as a charter school. Are we siphoning funds from the traditional public schools? All of those things. And I have to say that I find it to be among the most silly arguments, time wasting. It baffles me, because I believe strongly that we all should be in favor of great schools, no matter what form. We should be in favor of great private schools, parochial schools, traditional public schools, great charter schools. And we should hope that all bad schools, schools that aren't getting results, traditional public schools, charter, private, parochial, that they close their doors. You're welcome. Thank you.
We came in a little late because we tutor over at Emma Booker, second graders, and we've done this now for 2 years, and primarily in reading. One of the things we've both noticed is the maturity difference between the girls we tutor and the boys we tutor. The second thing is the physicality of the boys and how to channel that.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what you do, because we did come in late, you may have covered this, and I apologize if you did. How you channel that physical energy that these young boys have that we see and we would like to harness, even if it means they're climbing a tree while they're reading a book.
Yeah. So I will say that if you ever choose to come and see me present ever again and you're late because you're tutoring children, you've got the green light on that, okay? Always, always. So the physicality of boys, I mean, it's a reality. And the movement and all of those things. And you touched on the maturity of girls. Absolutely. They mature faster. They are better listeners at an earlier age. Some would argue they're better listeners forever. That's a different lecture. But I will say to you that harnessing the physicality of boys is really about two things. One is it's creating an environment and opportunities for them to release the energy. All right, so again, we're a sun theme. We call our students suns. We have solar periods, which in essence are mini recesses, and we have many of them. And we're quick to tell our teachers, if you are finding that you're not able to convey your information or that the learning environment is not what it needs to be because you have fidgety boys, don't fight that. Stop. Go outside, run them. I walked into our first grade class this morning. I don't have an office at school, so I just kind of end up wherever I think there's going to be a chair or a desk. I went into first grade this morning and they were doing yoga. They were doing 5 minutes of yoga, and I walked in and I see like little, I'm not going to do it because I'd injure myself, but he's in some kind of something. Because our teacher recognized, I'm not getting anywhere. 5 minutes, right, will gain me an hour if I stop and do it. And so that, just that mindset we think is really, really important. And then the other piece, in our classrooms, you'll see boys, some of whom are sitting in their chair at their desk, but you'll also see boys bouncing on a yellow kind of exercise ball. You'll also see boys standing up, raising hand. They're engaged, but they're doing it differently. You're welcome. Thank you. 2 questions here.
I taught many years in a parochial school in Cleveland, East 79th and Euclid, and it was Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament, and we also have St. Edward's there. I see from you there's a lot of inspiration that would have helped us to understand more what we could do or contribute. There, in other words, we were doing what the public schools do. And I think we could have done a lot better, had the opportunity to. Arsenio Hall came from our school. And I mean, that's to me a big success story. And of course, many sportsmen like you came from these backgrounds too. One thing we noticed that the boys and girls did well up to a certain grade level. When you get up to about 7th and 8th grade, they kind of fall off their interest. And then they look down on each other too, call each other names, use bad words, things like that. I could speak that language, but it would be not inspiring. But it's funny in a way, but you can see that I think these young people, as they get to a certain age, could see kind of a dead end to what is offered them, and they lose their interest and inspiration. So to me, that's an awful important element, is the inspiration and the care.
Yeah.
There's another person that Father Angel and his partner, Sister Angel in Acapulco, they pick up kids off the beach. They're abandoned kids. They have a school that's very successful, and they teach them also music, dancing, things like that. Yeah. So I think there's things that we might promote, help kids to realize that learning music, learning an instrument, being part of a little band, then you have to listen to other people, because I think it's those things that can help.
So you touched on 2 things, and I appreciate your comments. The first thing, you said you used the word inspiration. And we absolutely believe that inspiration is at the heart of this, just as it is for all of us in our lives. Something inspires us. Usually it's more than one thing that inspires us to function, to act, to strive, to seek out challenges. And so that's one of the things we do, is we try to use that as the starting point before we get to what reading curriculum we're going to use and what's our daily schedule going to look like. We ask the question, what does it take to inspire these boys? And there's no other answer than love. They have to feel that they're cared for. And if they feel that they are cared for, and if they feel that those in the building believe in them, they will be inspired by that. And that elevates what they're willing to do. That elevates their impression of themselves. And when you have that, now you start to see the beginnings of self-sufficiency, which is ultimately what we have to have. We have to have boys, in our case boys, who feel and capable of being self-sufficient to move on. And then the other thing that you talked about, which is what I was going to respond to before you even said it, there's a lot of talk about the achievement gap. The achievement gap. And I think that energy is well placed. But I will say that I think there are times that we talk about the achievement gap, but we miss what I think is even more important, which is what I call the actualization gap, right? When you are in a great school environment, you have a lot of different paths to identify interests, pursue passions, discover who you are. If you are not a great math student, there's the debate club, there's sports, there's acting and art and community service programs and all of these wonderful things that great schools afford young people, so that if reading isn't necessarily the thing that really excites them or the thing at which they're demonstrating a lot of proficiency, there are other ways to get that inspiration. But in too many schools where our boys attend, they don't have or feel like they have those other paths. And if you feel like your path to success is this thin rather than this wide, that's depressing. So actualization, what are the paths we can create for young people to self-actualize? And that is absolutely one of the things we do. And we do that primarily through our after-school programming, where we offer karate and we offer coding and, lacrosse and soccer, and we do art history in our enrichment program. So just creating a lot of paths for them to actualize. Yeah. Thank you.
Two questions for you, please. First one was obvious to me, like how on earth did you end up in Bradenton with this idea? But also, I'm working on the campaign for grade level reading, and I didn't know if you, as a new charter school, are eligible for any of that instructional guidance and money through the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and how it plugs in?
Sure. So thank you for both questions, and I'll answer both, and I'll do it in reverse order. The campaign for grade level reading we're absolutely tuned into, and when Ralph Smith was in town, he visited our school. And so it was really, really wonderful to have him come, and I had known Ralph for years when Visible Men was just a thought in my head. And the first thing he said was, "Neil, this has really come a long way, hasn't it?" I said, "Yeah, it sure has." And it was really great that he could experience that. So we have been invited to submit the required information that will be reviewed to determine whether or not we'll be a school that's officially plugged into the campaign. And so we're in the process of getting that information off. We're really, really hopeful that we can be. I mean, certainly everything that the campaign espouses and promotes is exactly in line with who we want to be as a school.
Well, and for volunteers, it's a very disciplined approach.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
a win-win.
It's a disciplined approach. It's also multifaceted, which is necessary too, right? I mean, it isn't, there are a lot of things that go into this, some of which we as a school are not equipped to address. We don't have the capacity, we don't have the expertise. There's certain lanes where we do have those things. We can focus on those, but it's great that the campaign is bringing in the other areas as well, early child care and those sorts of things. How did I end up in Bradenton? So it's a familiar story, I think, to many of you. My wife and I fell in love with the area. After coming down, we visited and visited and visited and kept telling ourselves, wow, it's getting harder and harder to leave this place. And we thought it would really be wonderful if we could find a way to live here full time. But we really didn't think that that was going to be a reality. We just thought that, well, maybe someday. The more time we spent down here and the more we became acquainted with the need, with a lot of what you don't see when you're spending your day on the beach on Longboat or hanging out at Kilwins, although not saying that was me, I didn't, but just in general, you don't see a lot of what Sarasota Bradenton has in terms of real life, day-to-day struggles, just like most towns, most cities. As we became more acquainted with that, my wife is a social worker, and she's one of our founding team members. We started to think that we could contribute, that the work we were doing around Visible Men could absolutely be applied here. And as we started to see that, then what was initially a fantasy started to become a reality. And we had 2 young children, we have 2 young boys who grew up coming here on vacation, loved the area, and we just felt it was a good move for us to make the move. So we did that. That's what got us to the area. When we decided to pursue a charter school, we submitted a charter application to both Manatee and Sarasota counties. And it was important to us, all of the founding team members are Sarasota County residents. We really, really had and continue to have an interest in the North Sarasota area, Newtown in particular. And so we applied to both counties. The Manatee County process was, it just moved a little faster and it ended earlier than the Sarasota County. When we received our charter in Manatee County, looked at the population, looked at where we could actually have a physical site, made the decision at that point that Manatee County was the right spot for our school. And I should mention that Manatee County and Sarasota counties, I'm straying off the question a little bit, but they have an inter-county arrangement, which means that we can have students from Sarasota County and the funding follows them even though they attend school in Manatee County. And the reverse is true also. So we have somewhere around 15 boys. Our first bus stop in the morning, our first stop is at the Robert Taylor Center in Newtown. And so we have about 15 boys from that community that come to our school, which is wonderful. Yeah, thanks. Yes, microphone. Oh, microphone over here, sorry.
Hi. I'm sorry, I came in a little bit late myself, but I can tell you're a great teacher. You've been smiling ever since I've come in here. You say how much you love children, and you're passionate about your work. I was wondering, what inspired you to become an educator?
Oh, wow. First of all, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. What inspired me to become an educator? So, I'm a school principal, and I have been head of private school, upper schools, at Out of Door Academy, at the school that I attended in Maryland, and never for one day have I been an academician. I'm just not an academician. I recognize the importance of strong curriculum and great teaching technique and professional, all of those things. I recognize the importance, but that's not what drives me in this role. What drives me is I'm a humanitarian. I'm a passionate humanitarian. And when I see what I consider to be a real injustice in terms of how long we have accepted these substandard results for outcomes for these boys, I just, particularly feeling that I thought I had some ideas and some ways to innovate, to try and do things differently, to affect different results. Once those two things came together, my desire for social justice and desire to apply some of the thoughts I had, that's what led me to education. And I will also say that, I think what makes our teachers really great and what makes great teachers great anywhere is that they think of themselves as more than just a classroom teacher. And to be a classroom teacher is a wonderful and magnificent thing in and of itself. When a classroom teacher thinks of themselves as a life changer, as an activist, right, and has that level of passion for their work, that to me is when pipelines get established between students, not just the boys with whom we work, but students anywhere. And when that passion, when that pipeline is established and you can see the growth that you're contributing to, It's hard to think of anything more addicting.
How do you get that into teacher education programs, though? Just off the subject, I was watching the Jeopardy recently of Teachers Jeopardy, and all three of them said the reason they got into education was they weren't good at something else. I was really disappointed to hear that.
Yeah.
They say that on television. You know?
So I do think that your question, it's important because so much of what we're doing and what we think is critical to affecting different outcomes, it is not the language of test scores. It's not the language of so much of the technicality that, you know, if you go to a school district meeting or if you go to it's just nuts and bolts and nuts and bolts. You absolutely do.
That you have, that you can see.
Well, I appreciate it, but
So that's what inspires children, I think, to want to learn.
well, I do appreciate it. I take it as a great compliment. And I think that message and that demand, that requirement needs to be continually promoted. Thank you very much.
I appreciate this tradition of two questions, if I may. The first is a quick one about numbers. I'm assuming that entrance is through lottery, and I wonder how many have applied for those positions, and then what kind of attrition you had in that first year.
Okay, good. So the first is about enrollment and lottery. Ooh, and I just found out that's the first question. Ah, good, yes. So lottery, what you're referring to as a lottery is when a charter school is full, and then there is a lottery to determine who amongst the large number or larger number of interested students will get the available seats. We have not reached a point where we have a lottery yet. So that is something, right? We want to fill our schoolhouse. And it gets back to, someone asked earlier about how boys come to us, how we get the word out, things like that. We have found a real challenge in the community awareness, not just of Visible Men Academy, that's kind of secondary, the community awareness of school choice, the community awareness of this world of high-performing charter schools after whom we model ourselves. So we feel like we have to do a lot of work to help people understand just the concept of what we're trying to do, the notion that they could choose us, even long before we promote who we are as a school.
And this is the third question.
Well, wait, I'm not sure if I got
the
to the
attrition.
second part. The attrition. So our attrition, we have a wonderfully high retention rate. From last year, where were we? Cindy, you're always good with the percentages. We were somewhere around high 80% in terms of retention. And the vast majority of the students who did not return to us moved out of the area. Right. So we have a very transient population, and every Monday I'm nervous that someone has moved because of some life circumstance or another.
No, that's great. Thank you. Now, this is difficult and wonderful work. I'm really curious, and I'm curious from both of you. Besides fundraising, what's the concern that keeps you up at night?
Besides fundraising, what's the concern that keeps me up at night? So I have in my head and have had from day one this idea that we want to be a local school with national impact. Local school, national impact. The local school side's pretty straightforward. We want boys to come into our building. We want to do everything we can to serve them as best we can, and we want to affect their lives in positive ways. The national impact part is that we know the crisis is huge, and we want to be able to have the learning that we're experiencing. We want to be able to share that and affect the way others see our boys, approach education. We want to be able to join with the other pockets of excellence that are out there. We're not the only school that are doing innovative things with boys. Eagle Academy in New York, KIPP in Houston, Excellence in Brooklyn, Urban Prep in Chicago. What are the truths that are emerging from each of those schools that we could put together and say, this is how we have to do it? What keeps me up at night is that part of what we think is going to emerge as a truth is the character and social development, the need to prioritize that. It is a very difficult thing, will be a difficult thing to prove that point in such a test score heavy climate. So how do we make the case that our emphasis on character and social development, prioritizing those things, and whole child approach actually will enhance test scores? That those two things will work together, and what keeps me up at night is finding the ways to make sure to make that case and to do it in a hurry.
And my answer would be, it's really understanding and developing the network structure to help the life circumstances the children live in and stabilize the family home life. Because the only way to really propel a child into, graduating high school, going on to college, is to really work with both the family and the child and meet them where they are and create a network of support for them to achieve, their greatness, as to bring that out in every single person we touch. And as a school, we're much more highly hands-on with our families, and we find that our success is coming from the social trust that is being built between the families and the school. Like we mentioned, a lot of the families that come to us never had that positive school experience. Most of them never graduated high school themselves. So for us to really plant the future possibilities and outlook for not only the child, but for the families, we're here for them. And Neil mentioned our parenting program that we have, which is a beautiful program, but what we've come to discover by doing the program is that for many of, especially the mothers who are participating in the program, this is the first time they've actually been able to express themselves as individuals. And actually we take care of childcare in addition to the students that are there, so they get to sit there and talk for a few hours with people who understand, have the social work network put into play to balance their home life. And that's propelling the children, our retention rate, everything to stay with us. So that's what keeps me up, is how we do that.
Thanks, Cindy.
Neil, as motivated as you are, I'm curious about your own background. Did you come from a family situation that encouraged you? Obviously, you're very accomplished, or did you pull yourself out of adversity?
Oh, wow. So I'm very, very fortunate. My parents were incredibly loving. Both parents were in the home. Both parents are still in the home. They were very, very supportive. The thing that my parents stressed, I just think back, very vivid memories of conversations, and it was always about, how are you treating people? It was always about, how are you treating people? Of course they wanted me to get good grades, and of course they wanted me to work hard and all of those things, but the priority in the home was, how are we treating each other? How are you treating people? And that is the environment in which I grew up, and that has always been a priority for me. And I hope that if my two sons were here, they would tell you that that's Dad's thing. How are you treating people? How are you treating people? Because that's what I prioritize. Did I pull myself up from adversity? Yeah, in some ways, yes, in the way that adversity strikes all of us, and we have to deal with it. Lower/middle upper class upbringing. I wasn't hungry often, but I also know that my parents, they had to work really, really hard to create the opportunities that I was able to enjoy, going to a private school from 8th grade on, the work that they did to be able to send me to the school that they did, and all of those things. So I was very fortunate in those ways. But for me, just this family ethic around caring for others and being mindful of others' needs, that to me has been, has really been the root of all of this. Thank you for the question.
And your school, where did you go to school?
College?
No.
High school? Yeah. I went to Landon, which is an all-boys private school in Bethesda, Maryland. I went to public school, Cannon Road Junior High in Silver Spring, Maryland, and White Oak Junior High. Yeah? Oh, wonderful. This is great. Oh, Parkwood Deli. Come on. So New Hampshire Avenue and the whole deal? Beautiful. So yes, and then as an 8th grader, I went to Landon and graduated from there. Yes, that's right. Yes.
They've been worried about me, whether I get to ask a question. You must have incredible teachers at your school to do the things that you're asking them to do. It's a longer school day,
Yes.
longer school year. And I was hoping you'd talk about what you do to get this, attitude of how are you treating each other, and how do you get your teachers to have those kinds of characteristics, because not everybody does out there nowadays.
You're 100% right, and any opportunity I get to talk about how great our teachers are, I really appreciate, because they do give a lot. We do ask a lot of them. So when I said we prioritized personal connection to the mission, you've hit on why. Because if you aren't personally connected to this mission and personally invested, if something about this isn't personal to you, then the longer school day is going to be a problem. The longer school year is going to be a problem. The other thing we do, right, so we really we think a key to our success is being able to solve riddles around the over-disciplining of boys from our demographic. When you look at statistically how black boys, Hispanic boys, boys from low-income communities, detention, suspension, expulsion. I mean, it's unbelievable, the disparity in the statistics. And if we don't get to that, right, if we don't find ways to respond to their behavior in different ways, then we're really not going to make any headway at all. So what that means is that we're actually making it even more difficult for our teachers. Because I say to my teachers, I say, if you have a behavior problem in your class that has become too much, too disruptive for you to handle and still do what you need to do for the other students, send the boy out of the class. Come have him see me. And you need to know that you're probably going to see him again in 3 minutes. Okay? Because he's not going to be with me for an hour or sitting in the principal's office, or that's not going to happen, because that's an hour that he desperately needs. And in that 3 minutes, if I can get him to recognize what the problem is and then to commit to turning it around, he's coming right back. And if it happens again in 15 minutes, send him again, and you'll see him in 3 minutes again. So and that's challenging for our teachers, because we're stripping them of the traditional responses, just get them out of the class. So it is all about the personal investment to the mission. The other thing that I think is really, really important, and I know that all great teachers will tell you this, autonomy in the classroom, right? So our teachers have tremendous ownership of what happens inside their four walls. And great teachers, inspiring teachers, want that. Just like any of us, we love the idea that it can be in our hands, and we're trusted to put our stamp and our artistry on it, and our teachers definitely have a lot of autonomy, so they feel ownership in the classroom. We are in our second year. We have a lot of things that need to be done, and we don't have the staff for it, so our teachers also are afforded opportunities to have additional duties. Additional duties, right? So additional duties means we don't have the person that can do this duty. You have an additional duty, and our teachers respond to that because we're really heavy into this idea that you're going to contribute, and if you express an interest, we'll find some way for you to contribute. Then the last thing I'll say that I think really feeds our teachers, they see the progress in our boys. They see the growth, and they see the impact that they most directly are having, and that is tremendous fuel. Tremendous fuel.
Does Felice Schulinger help you interview these teachers? Because she's really good at
She is really, really good. Yeah, she's really good. And I hope you saw Felice dancing around on the...
I did.
Good, good. Thank you for your question. Why don't I have a principal's office? Oh, well, I guess I do have an office. There's a file cabinet. Right, that's kind of purely a function of space. Every inch that we have is used for another purpose, and I have a laptop and an iPad. I'm good.
You're a nomad.
Yes, that's right. And there's a question back here when you.
What's that 3 minutes look like?
What's the?
The 3 minutes that you spend with the student that comes to you. What's that look like?
What's the 3 minutes look like? What the student spends with me? Well, the first thing is, if it's the first 3 minutes, I'm a pretty nice guy, right? So the first 3 minutes, you know, what I think is that I have to identify, and I really, really believe this with behavior with our boys, it's about deficits. There's something they're lacking in that moment that is causing them to be disruptive. So I try to really quickly identify what is it that they're lacking. And so I often start off with, tell me what's happening, what do you need? Because if they can articulate that, right, that in of itself is a great skill for them to develop, but it also gives me the information I need, right? What is it that you're lacking? Because I feel like we've got to fill deficits. And then the other thing is I switch into coach mode really, really quickly. You can do this. I have faith in you. I know you can do this. I'm going to send you back into that class, and you're going to show, you know, Mrs. Garcia, that you can do this. I know you can do it. And most often, right, for the low level sort of, you know, junk behavior kinds of thing, that's really all you need. That's all you need. If it's the second 3 minutes, they get a different tone, right? They get a different tone. Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Okay, this was a political question. Are you over-assessed? But I mean tested to death right now. And the second thing is, in charter schools, my understanding was that they had to reach a certain level of admissions, around 400 students, to be break-even point. And how are you getting around, which is really her question, how are you getting around that problem?
Right. So the first question, are we over-assessed? And the answer is not yet. We're kindergarten through fourth grade. This is our first year of having a third and a fourth grade. So this will be our first year of what is now FSA, used to be FCAT. So in addition to that, we do our own internal diagnostic testing. And we choose the pace at which we do that. We use an instrument called MAP, Measures of Academic Progress, which is a national tool that is aligned to the Common Core, and so it feels like it gives us a good handle on the proficiency levels in reading and math. We do that quarterly. Our teachers have their own internal assessments as well. So not yet, we're not over-assessed. That's going to change pretty quickly. At the beginning of March, we have our fourth grade FSA writing exam, and then the reading and math comes for third and fourth grade. So we're going to hit testing grades, and it's going to feel that we're over-assessed pretty quickly. Yeah, and then the other question you had was about the funding and self-sustainability. So yeah, that's our number. If we can get to 340, 350 students, then the per pupil allocation, that revenue stream, starts to match up with what it costs for us to deliver our program. Between now and then, right, there's a gap, and it's traditional fundraising methods, and Cindy runs that beautifully, and it's individual donors. It is corporate and government grants and foundation grants. It's individual donors, and it's individual donors. And there are some beautiful envelopes out on the table outside this door that individual donors. Yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate that. I'll give you a discount. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And there are a couple things I want to say. First is our board chair is here because our board chair is a professor here. And Marie Bird, I'm seeing, just walked in a few minutes ago, but thanks for being here, Marie. Yes. Individual donors, Marie says. Yes. And then the other thing I want to say, I really appreciate your being here, and I really appreciate the earnestness of your questions. I am encouraged. I'm really encouraged, and the work ahead is daunting. This crisis is large. We've allowed it to become a crisis on a large scale, and it's daunting. But I do this a lot. I get out and I talk to folks, and the interest in the work that we do and the commitment to finding solutions and contributing in whatever ways you can, it's really encouraging. So please know how much I appreciate your investment of your time and your energy and your interest in the work that we're doing. It means a lot to us.
Do you have time to tell us what Visible Men in Boulder, how you once said how all this started in some group of men your age? The Visible Men?
Oh, sure. Well, the Visible Men started as after-school programs. We started it as after-school programs, same mission, but we worked with Montgomery County Schools to go in and work with small groups of boys that they sent to us that were having disciplinary issues primarily. And we said, we think we can work with them, role modeling, mentoring, so on and so forth. And so Visible Men Academy is really an evolution of that origin. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Bev. Oh.